Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. This session is called Designing High Quality Assessments that are fun. We're going to give you some great resources to be able to use to design assessments. We're also going to talk to you about how to design those assessments. And before we get started, my name is Rachel Shepard and I am an assistant principal at Watauga High School.
And my name is Tiara Stark, and I'm also an assistant principal at Watauga High School. And we're just so excited for you to join us here for the 2021 North Carolina BT Summit.
Okay, so if this were a live session, we're going to try to sort of walk this fine line between a pre-recorded session and a live session. So if this were a live session, this is when we would tell you that we want you to take advantage of the Q&A feature in Google Slides to be able to ask us questions throughout the presentation. And there's a screenshot in the top right-hand corner of your screen right now. If you click on the little drop-down arrow beside present, it will pop up and tell you that it's presenter view. This is something that you can use if you're using Google Slides to do any kind of a presentation in class. You can use this to be able to assess where your students are and whether they're understanding the information that you're presenting to them. And on the next slide, it's going to show you what that presenter view is actually going to look like. It's going to pop up and it will give you two separate windows. One is going to have your presentation in it, and the other is going to look like this box that's here on the top. And it actually allows the people who are participating in your presentation to ask you questions live. You can keep up that top little box there. It'll tell you how long your presentation is running and everything like that, but you can keep that top box up. And as you're going through whatever content delivery you're doing in your classroom, your students can actually ask you questions live. It's a great tool for engagement. It's also a great way for you to be able to assess where your students are and if they're understanding the material that you're presenting.
So let's start by talking about the purpose of assessment. Why do we try to figure out what our students have learned? Why do we try to figure out where our teaching is at? So we need to be able to identify what students not only know, but what they're able to do. Remember, revise Bloom's taxonomy, RBT. So we got to figure out their knowledge, their understanding, but we also have to figure out how they can showcase their learning to us. And we do this because we want to be able to provide effective instruction. We want to help our students master the content. That's the purpose of having these standards. So we want to shift from having a fixed mindset where you will learn this if you do not take a multiple choice assessment, or if you fail your multiple choice assessment, you don't know the content, and change it to a growth mindset. Where are you right now? Think about, everything that we've been reading about COVID and this virtual learning. If we stop saying you're a C-level student and that's where you're going to be, let's figure out where we can help you grow. Okay, we're not going to call you a C-level student. We're going to say, you're at the understanding level of this, and we really want to see you at the being able to apply level. So how can we get you there? And it's a shift from teaching, from instructing, to learning. Where is the learning? Not, I'm going to teach you this, but I'm going to help you learn this, because it's the student's knowledge that's most important, not the flip side of that. And then it also helps you understand where you may need to have reteaching, or where you may need to have some adjustments throughout the instruction.
So another tool that you can use as you're trying to assess your students is called Poll Everywhere. Poll Everywhere is an add-on within Google Slides. We're a Google district. Everything that we do is Google, so a lot of the tools that you're going to see are sort of geared toward that. But Poll Everywhere is also a standalone tool. It allows you to embed formative assessment during your presentation. So if you're giving direct instruction, if you are instructing your kindergartners on the habitats of polar bears, or if you're instructing your high school biology students on the structure of an animal versus a plant cell, you can embed formative assessment questions within your presentation to be able to really tell where your students are, if they understand the content that you're delivering, You can also embed practice assessment questions. I'm not a huge fan, as I'm sure you'll be able to tell with this presentation, I'm not a huge fan of multiple choice questions, but it can be a useful tool for pretty quick, immediate feedback and understanding of if your students get what you're trying to teach them. Have they learned the content? Can they tell you what they know? So Poll Everywhere is a great tool to be able to do that. And this is an example. And again, if we were in a live session, we would actually have you participating in this. But if you put an embedded question in one of your presentations, and your kids are participating live in the assessment, this would come up and show you in bar graphs very quickly where your kids feel like they are, where their mastery is of the particular content.
I find that even if I teach the same thing for 3 blocks a day, each group is different, and it's important to figure out where they are. Yes, that could mean that your pacing gets off a little bit, but if you're meeting your students where they are, their learning outcomes are going to be much stronger than otherwise.
This is another example of a formative assessment. This is just something that you can do very quickly in the middle of a lesson as a transitional piece, anything like that. You can just do a temperature check, have them thumbs up, thumbs down. Are we good? Are we bad? Some teachers I've seen use red and green cards. So as they're going through a lesson, as students are working independently, different things like that, they'll have just a piece of construction paper, red on one side, green on the other, that they've laminated, and students can lay that on their desk and flip it to red if they feel like they're having trouble. And that way it gives the teacher a little bit of an opportunity to just very quickly glance around the room, see where kids need help, and go straight to that student and be able to offer them one-on-one assistance if they need it.
So let's talk a moment about the difference between formative and summative assessments. And what you'll see over the next 2 slides is that we split that based off of students, and then as the instructor, the facilitator, the teacher. So for students, there is a very big difference between formative and summative. So for formative, this is low stakes. This is not something that they should never have the question of, okay, how many points does this count? Or how much a percentage of my grade is this going to be? Because a formative is just to get that formative information from your students in their learning. So again, it's assessment for learning, not of learning. So this could be a bell ringer. This could be an exit ticket, figuring out where your students are going. It gives the students an opportunity to improve his or her learning. That's where that low stakes comes in. It shouldn't be, this is 10 points of your grade for today. It is where am I, so that I can improve. Or it's also for the student to know, okay, this is where I'm at. I thought I was further than that. I need to take more time as the student to study, or I need to ask a question about this because I obviously didn't get it. So it's information for them as much as the teacher. And then on the flip side, a summative assessment, think of summary. So a summative assessment is high stakes. This is probably going to be something that counts a high percentage of points, either that particular day or that particular standard or that particular 9 weeks. It's an assessment of the learning. It's sort of a final saying. So we've done all these little formative assessments. You've grown. Now where are we at? Because this semester is ending, or this 9 weeks is ending, and I need to know where you are at summary wise for that particular standard lesson content. It gives the students an opportunity to prove what he or she has learned, what they have learned.
In formative and summative assessments, you can have a quiz that's either a formative or a summative assessment. It's not the type of assessment that you're using, it's the way that you use it. So if you give the kids a quiz, and if that's a grade and it's going to go in the grade book, and there's no opportunity for them to go back and correct their mistakes or retake the quiz or anything like that, then it's a summative assessment. If it's a quiz that students are going to take, and then they have an opportunity to go back, see where they maybe messed up, see what pieces of information they didn't understand, and then retake the quiz to demonstrate mastery, then it's being used as a formative assessment tool.
So let's look at what that means for the teachers. So in formative, you're doing it throughout instruction. It may be as simple as a question. It's so powerful during a presentation or during a quote unquote lecture, if you're questioning throughout that and you're getting feedback from the students that they have understanding either of previous knowledge or of something that you just did there, then you're doing that throughout instruction. It's part of the process that you're using for that particular standard. And it's not something that should be used for a final grade. A formative assessment, again, is for learning, not of learning. So it shouldn't be for a final grade. And then the results help guide you as the instructor in the next steps. Maybe through a formative assessment, you realize, wow, this lesson's pacing a lot quicker than I thought it was. I can go ahead and get into more content, or I can go ahead and help the students apply the knowledge. Remember that RBT. So there are additional steps after the assessment for a formative, because there's more to be done. It's not a summary. It's not a proof of what has been learned. It is helping improve. Now, for the flip side, for summative, for a teacher, it should be administered at the conclusion of the instruction. So instruction is over. This could be, again, 9 weeks, midterm. It could be at the end of a standard. Like, you've got to get a final assessment of that standard so that you can move on. It determines students' mastery of the content, mastery of the standard specifically. And their results are going to be probably a pass, fail, or proficient, not proficient. Don't worry too much about the grade specifically, but did they get it? Yes or no? And then remember that a summative assessment is the final step in the process. So something that I always like to use is teach back. And so this is a process where the students research something or learn something, and then they teach the concept either to a buddy, to a partner, to a team, to the whole class even. And then there are different ways to do that. So you can do retelling. So a student, all students get the same instruction, and then each student retells that content or that standard in their own way. You can also do where it's new content, and there's so much of it that each individual student looks up one piece of it, and they become the expert of that piece, and then they teach it to the whole class. So there's different variations of teach back that you can use.
Okay, so one other area that we wanted to make sure that we touched on is formal versus informal assessment. That seems to be an area that we see a lot of teachers struggle with, understanding that formative and formal assessment are two different things. So with formal assessment, this is going to be data-informed assessment. They're typically standardized measures. Every kid is going to get the same exam, and we're going to measure whether they're successful or not based on a standardized measure. Typically with formal assessment, the data is going to be mathematically computed, and there's going to be a score assigned. This is going to be like your typical quiz or test or anything like that. With formal assessment, you're going to use that piece of assessment to determine whether a student's performance or their achievement compares to their peers. Are they ahead? Are they behind? Are they pretty much average? It's typically for a single point in time. You're not usually going to see formal assessment like a unit test given over the period of a week. It's typically going to be one single point in time. Examples would be things like standardized tests, quizzes, all of those. Your informal assessments are going to be more content and performance driven. So you're going to look at specific criterion. How is a student performing over time? Informal assessment is used more frequently to inform your instruction and to monitor your students' progress, again, over time. We want to see how students have done from point A to point B, not on a single particular day. Some examples of informal assessment would be things like checklists, portfolios, gathering anecdotal data, those types of things. So there's a difference in formative and summative assessment and formal and informal assessment. So here again, if we were in a live presentation setting, we would be implementing another type of an assessment with you, and that would be Quizizz. If you are familiar with Quizizz, Kahoot, we're going to talk about some different tools like that in just a second. Kahoot, most people are familiar with, but it is all of the kids all together participating in an assessment all at once. It gets pretty intense. The music it kind of makes you a little bit anxious, and if you've ever played Kahoot in a group of kids, it almost feels like they think that the closer that they get to the board, the better chance they have of getting it right. And it's just kind of, it can be a little bit overwhelming. Quizizz is a little bit more low key than that. They all have the same questions. They're all participating in the assessment, but they're doing it at their own pace. So, once you go, you create an account in Quizizz, and everything that we're showing you is free. Once you create an account in Quizizz, you can, we've got a couple screenshots here. You've got the option to start a live quiz, either the classic or the instructor paced. So classic is where kids are going to work at their own pace. Instructor paced is going to be a little bit more like the Kahoot version. Once you create that, you've also got 3 different options to choose from for how you want to administer the assessment. So classic is where everybody works individually. They're all going to participate at their own pace. The team approach is where you're going to have kids within teams. If you want to go ahead and click one more time. So they're going to work together. They're going to collaborate. They're going to work on the assessment in a small group, competing against other small groups. And then the last version is the test version, which is essentially like you're administering an individual quiz. The students have to log in individually. You're going to have to assign them to classes and that sort of thing. So if that's something that you want to do, then you have that option within Quizizz. There are also some other different options that you can use. So you can limit the number of times that participants can take it if you're administering it as a quiz. You can show the answers as they go. I love the memes. If you set it up to where it's going to show them whether they got the answer right or wrong, it'll give them like a little meme in the middle of it. You can set the timer. You can do all kinds of different things like that. Once you have set it up on your end, then when you're ready to administer the quiz, this is all they're going to do. So on their phone, on their computer, on their iPad, whatever it is that they have, they're just going to go to joinmyquiz.com and they're going to put in your code. You're going to get all of the data back from their participation. You can do that, again, 2 different ways. You can have them log in and make sure that they have a name connected to it so that you can see individually how they do, or you can just do it as a whole group data. And we've got some screenshots to show you what that data is going to look like as well. So here you're going to get individual participant data. You can go online and you can see how your kids did on each of the different questions. You can also click on individual question data. So once you do that, it's going to show you, okay, question number 3, 95% of the kids in my class missed question number 3. That's really information that I need to go back and make sure that I have retaught and make sure that they get it. And then there's also the overview view, and that will give you overall, just kind of gives you big picture, again, 30,000 foot view of where your kids did, how they performed on the assessment. Now, these are some other tools that you can use. That was kind of a quick overview of Quizizz. These are some other really, really good tools that you can use to do digital formative assessment in your classes.
I love Go Formative, which is called Formative now. I've just always taught with it as Go Formative. But what's great about it is you can choose different types of questions, and then students can respond to you in multiple modes. And so for some students, they would prefer to draw an answer or interpret it through drawing. And then they could also do multiple choice, and then you can do little recordings on there, and there's just all kinds of stuff you can do on Go Formative, which makes it fun and easy. I loved Plickers because Plickers, you can print out little cards, and then students can scan it with if you've got like a one-to-one mobile computing device and their Chromebooks, you can scan it with that. You can scan it with, you can scan your students with your own cell phone, and you just scan the room real quick, and then all of a sudden you've got all this data at your hand that you can flag through. And then that kid keeps that little Plicker card for the rest of your semester. And then, of course, we talked about Kahoot and how that's a lot of fun. It's crazy how competitive these kids get in Kahoot. It's crazy. And then Mentimeter is, I think it's pretty limited for the free version, but it's still really good data for you during a presentation for Mentimeter. And then Nearpod has a game similar to Kahoot. It's called Time to Climb.
Yeah.
Have all their little characters, the bear and the frog, and then it gets really competitive too in the questions, and it's all this music's going on, but kids love that. And then what's great about Nearpod is you can share it with people in your school or department, and you can have teams in Nearpod. There's so many free lessons in Nearpod that you can pull down. You can do an instructor guided lesson. You can do a student paced lesson. And then I'm going to let Rachel go over some of those last three.
With Plickers, one of the things that I really like about it is if you are in a school that doesn't have a lot of technology, the only person in the room who has to have a piece of technology for Plickers to work is the teacher. Because you can just use your cell phone and you can scan it. You can use your teacher's laptop, anything like that. So it's a really cost-effective method of digital formative assessment for your kids. And you will all have access to this live presentation. So all of these tools that are on this slide are hyperlinked. So all you need to do, if you want to check out Plickers, if you want to check out Nearpod, all you have to do is click it, and you'll be able to go straight to that website.
I wanted to say one more thing about Plickers before Rachel moves on. I forgot about this. Plickers, it's also good for the kids because they can answer almost anonymously because you turn the card based on the answer that you're giving. So others don't feel like they're giving the wrong answer and they're just going to copy their friends because you can barely see it. Only really the kid can see their own card, and all they do is just turn it a different way. So if you cut them right, no one in the room will know who answers, and so it's a little more anonymous for the students.
Definitely. Flipgrid is a good one that you can use, like we said just a minute ago, to be able to do teach back. One of my son was in a foods class this semester, and his teacher used Flipgrid. We were all virtual, of course, at one point in the year, and his teacher used Flipgrid. They would make different, Lord, y'all, he made cookies like every day of my whole life. I think I gained 20 pounds, but his teacher would use Flipgrid for them to be able to show what they had cooked, show the process and all of that. So she was able to do some really, really good formative assessment while he was at home. It was a great tool. So this is Nearpod. Nearpod does have a paid version, but you don't have to have the paid version. There is a free version as well. So with Nearpod, one of the things that I really, really like about this is if you have already created a presentation in Google Slides or in PowerPoint or anything like that, you can upload those slides into Nearpod and create an interactive lesson. So all you do once you create an account, you go in to create a new lesson, and then you're just going to click on add content and activities. Once you've uploaded your slides, you have lots of different options. You've got videos, you've got web content, vocabulary, there's stuff from BBC, you can input audio, all kinds of different things like that. You can also, in between your slides, embed different activities. So time to climb that Tiara was talking about just a second ago, that's in here. You can embed a quiz. You can embed a Flipgrid. You can do all kinds of different activities if you want them to stop. If you're in math and you want them to stop and demonstrate a problem to you, you can embed what's called Draw It, and they can actually draw out on their device whatever the math problem is that you want them to complete. It's all embedded. It's all an interactive lesson that you can get all of the data from that your kids have completed. And then this is just a really quick video. GimKit, if you have not played in GimKit, listen, you need to play in GimKit. It is so much fun. I just went to one of our teachers' classes to do an observation and ended up, I was supposed to be there for 20 minutes. I think I stayed for 45 because all they were doing was playing GimKit, and it was amazing. There's classic, there's a team mode, there's a humans versus zombies, floor is lava. The super rich mode is so much fun, and you put the questions in. It was a French teacher in our building, and so all the kids, they were doing Draw That. She had given them just different phrases in French. They were basically playing like Pictionary. They had to draw out whatever the picture was, and the kids had to guess based on the French and the picture what it was. So great tool for formative assessment, and you also get lots and lots of data back from that to see where your kids are and how they're performing. And this is another one that we've got lots of hyperlinks on for you. When you do summative assessments, we've talked a lot about formative assessments and different formative assessment tools. Summative assessments can also be really fun, and you can also get lots of really good data on that. With a summative assessment, you need to look at what needs to be assessed and then determine what's the best way to do it. Multiple choice and essays, I'm not a huge fan of multiple choice. I'll just go ahead and give you that disclaimer. But multiple choice and essays do have a place in your classroom. I taught AP for years and years and years. As an AP teacher, I'm not doing my job if I don't expose the kids to multiple choice questions. If you have an EOC or an EOG, you have to expose your kids to multiple choice questions because that's the ultimate summative assessment that they're going to have in your class or your grade level. But that shouldn't be the only thing that you use. And I always try to tell people, as an AP teacher, I assigned a lot of essays. My kids did an enormous amount of writing. But you need to realize that when you assign your kids a 5-page essay, you're going to read the same 5-page essay times however many kids you have. So if you're teaching 50 kids in an American history class, you're going to read the same 5-page essay 50 times. Yes, it absolutely has a place, but it shouldn't be the only kind of summative assessment that you're using. So try to think outside the box. If you look at these, and y'all have access to this presentation, and you can go through and look at this, we tried to give you some activities that you could just take and run with. A lot of these, we're both high school teachers, so a lot of these are specific to high school, but you can adapt them for middle and elementary school. The first one is a digital breakout. I don't know, you're probably familiar with like the escape rooms and the breakout boxes and those sorts of things. Breakout boxes are great. It's a really good hands-on activity. They're also expensive to put together. You're looking at between $50 and $100 to build a breakout box. You can do them online using Google Pages, Google Sites, and Google Forms for free. So there's a presentation here that walks you through step by step how to build a digital breakout. And then there's an example of one that we created for the American Revolution. So you can go through, you can just use it right now and never have to do another thing with it. There's some examples of station activities. Stations are not just for elementary school. Your middle and high school students love going to stations. They like being able to move from activity to activity. Speed dating is another one that my kids really had a good time with. I've seen several teachers in our building use speed dating. Like in the English department, we have a teacher who lets kids speed date books. They sit around in a circle, they get to go through and they get to read pieces of a book really quickly and move on to see which one they want to read the entire book for. And then there's a couple different projects down here at the bottom. Like I said, they're all hyperlinked. Have them create a soundtrack. Have them dress up. One of my favorite things to do in class was my American history kids would have mixers. So in the 1920s, every kid got to take on a persona. They got to dress up and come to class as the character, and they had to stay in character the entire time they were in my class. So it was just a lot of fun, just different ways. Have them create a board game, have them write a children's book on whatever topic you're doing. And then if you're in elementary school, have them write the children's book and then go down to like kindergarten or first grade and read it to them. And then social media. This is another one. We talked about social media in our last session on professionalism, but you can also use social media with your classes. You can look at Twitter. You can look at their templates here for you to have them create a Twitter page, have them create an Instagram feed, lots of different things like that.
So we've shared a lot with you, and don't forget that you'll have access to the presentation for all these links. So something that's really important about any type of assessment tool that doesn't give you like a multiple choice, you know what the answers are, you know what percentage you got. If you're going to use any other type of application-based assessment tool or investigative type assessment tool, you want to make sure that you have a rubric, and it's most important that you create the rubric before you give the assessment. It's back to what Rachel was talking about with backward design, making sure that you start with the end in mind, unless that's coming up. Did we already discuss that? Or is that coming up?
I think that's coming up.
Oh, I spoke earlier. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
But it's really important for this. So always start with, do that before, and then give it to your students. Let them know if they reach this level, you're going to get this many points. It's not a way for them to slack off, but it is a way for them to prioritize. Rachel and I were talking about a situation earlier where it's really important for you to prioritize. We know that these kids don't come to school for this one class every single day, and that's all they do in their lives. No, they've got situations at home. They've got 4 to 5 to 6 to 3 other classes that they're taking. A lot of them are working on the side. Some of them are taking care of their siblings. So it's important for them to know, if I do this much, this is what I'll get. If I do this much, this is what I'll get. And I'm doing a lot more learning. So determine what areas are most important for the assessment. And then look versus you've got to think about the content of what they're going to give back to you, and then also the creativity. How much does creativity matter for this particular assessment? Is it really important? And then that's also a way for you to bring in other content areas. It's so important for a student to know that just because they're in a math class doesn't mean that English has nothing to do with math, or art has nothing to do with math, or science. It's important for them to know. It's really interesting to me. I was a CTE teacher, and so I would have these students, and I know that high school students take English every year, but sometimes I would have them write a short paper for me, and it was like they were texting or something. And so I would go to their English teacher and I would say, hey, like, show me part of their work, help me understand. I'm not sure what I'm missing. And they would say, they write beautiful papers for me. And so helping our students understand that there are connections between all of the content that they learn, and that there are applications for each of the pieces, and helping them know that they can do that wonderful English paper in their foods class too. And so looking at content versus creativity. And then remember that your rubrics can be very simple or be very detailed. The more detailed they are, the more students are going to have maybe some difficulty meeting all those pieces. So be careful with what you include in that rubric. And when you get the presentation, there's a link here for those. What you'll see between these two pictures on here, one of them is they just have this is basically the outline. This is what I expect of you for your project. And then this is how many points you get. And I'll give you up to 30 for your trifold board. And this is what I expect. So for me, that would be bare minimum, the appearance and the creativity and the effort. And those are points. And then this one over here that you can see, these are the objectives of the assignment. This is the information that I want. And you have points 1 through 10, and 1 through 3 is sort of you poorly met that objective, and then average, and then you were outstanding for that objective. But even in that, there's point variances between those. And then the next slide, you'll see a single point rubric, which is probably the easiest to understand. And basically you have a list of criteria or objectives or standards or just pieces of the project. And then all you're doing is for that, you showed. So for this one, it's the difference between glows and grows. And so you're looking for you got this. This is phenomenal. You got this. Move on. Here, I want you to grow a little bit. But what you're doing in there is instead of providing a point value, you're actually giving specific feedback which helps them grow or helps build them up. We talked in one of our other sessions about the compliment sandwich, and it's important for a student to see that they are doing well in some areas, but they have some areas that they need to grow in. And it's part of your coaching strategies for your students if you can give them all of that information. Remember, you can also use all of these rubrics for self-assessment. It's really interesting to see a student, if you give them this rubric and then say, now for 10 points on the project, you're going to give a self-assessment for yourself for the project, and for them to go through and be like, oh, wait, I didn't do that. Oh, no, I didn't do that. And then see it versus what you would assess them with on that. And you can also do this for peer assessment. If you've got a group project, it's really important that the peers in the group give each other feedback for what they did in the project. And then it's, of course, reflection.
And somehow we missed the slide on backward design. So do you care to go back to number 7?
Absolutely.
And we'll get it. I can't believe we missed that.
I know.
It's okay, though.
Slide 7, you said?
Yep.
Absolutely. Here we are.
So now that we're at the end, we're going to go back and we're going to talk about how you begin. So when you look at anytime you're designing a unit, anytime you're designing an assessment, you always want to begin with the end in mind. So when I get to the end of this unit, how do I want to make sure that my students have mastered the content? What content standards should they have mastered? So that's your goals. What should students know, understand, and be able to do? How are you going to determine if they've mastered those content standards? So that's your assessment piece. And then from that, how are you going to teach those content standards? How are you going to design your lessons to make sure that they meet their goals and that they have mastered and have make sure that they understand the content. So make sure that you always design your formative and your summative assessments before you create your lesson. Otherwise, if you don't begin with that assessment before you create your lesson, you're not necessarily going to make sure that you have taught the students the things that they need to know when they get to the end of that lesson. That ensures that what you're assessing is also what you've taught. So backward design, huge component of making sure that you are meeting your students' needs and making sure that you reach their goals.
I'm going to fly through here.
Yes.
Make sure we didn't miss anything else. Oh. Okay. And that's all we had. This is us.
All right. Thank you all so much for being with us. Again, here's our contact information. If you have any questions, if you want to talk about any of the different tools or different resources that we've provided for you, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. And we hope this has been informative, and we hope that this has helped you to design some assessments that are also fun.
Thank you.